Welcome to Don't Quote Me on That. One day we will have an intro, but today is not that day.
Hello, and welcome back to Don't Quote Me on That. I'm Kalina, and I got the order wrong, but I'm not starting over because it's very late. I'm very tired. I have to work in the morning, so we're getting right into it. As you can hear, Eleanor has left me once again. And honestly, guys, pretend this is a Reddit, relationship advice post. How many times can your partner bail on you before you, ask for a separation? Asking for a friend, definitely not for me. Anyway, I, as you can tell by the title, I presume, watched a movie called Bullet Train. I was shortlisting a bunch of movies, and I tried to watch this movie my dad recommended, which is called A Tramp by the Door or something like that. But the bootleg website I was watching off of, hypothetically, of course, just wasn't cooperating. So, also, I do have a co-host here with me today. It's my new cat. He's sleeping on my hand, so if you hear any bells jingling or meowing, that's why. He doesn't have a lot of thoughts, but when he does, he's very serious about them. Anyway, so I watched Bullet Train on Netflix because it came out, and yesterday I saw a video of Aaron Taylor Johnson doing a backflip, and I just felt like, that was a sign that I should watch something with him in it. So I did. And I'm going to try something a little different. Usually when Ellen and I talk about movies, which isn't very often, we kind of go through the plot chronologically and share our thoughts. So I just wanted to try something a little different, especially because it's just me by myself. So I'm going to give you the rundown of the plot. Per Netflix, it was 7. Was it 7? No, sorry. 5 assassins get onto a train and basically kind of try to kill each other and survive, right? So we start out with this guy whose son is in the hospital because he got pushed off a roof because he was neglecting his son. He wasn't paying attention to his son or whatever. He left his son for several hours. So he's going onto this train to get revenge for that. And so my first note was I love a good revenge plot because I think when they're done well, they're so fun. Then we see Brad Pitt, who's a hired assassin. Well, he's not really an assassin. He's hired to do a snatch and grab job. So he gets on the same page, and you're like, oh, they're going to interact, blah, 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 blah. Then we meet Aaron Taylor Johnson, and I think Brian Tyree Henry's the other guy's name. They play these two characters, Lemon and Tangerine. They're there to return this random guy not a random guy, but they're there to return this guy that's on the train to his father, who's some big crime lord, okay? So these are the 4 characters we have in play. Then our first guy, the dad, runs into this little girl played by Joey King, who still now I'm not quite sure what her name was. I think her code name was the Prince, because everyone had different code names. So the Prince is not what you think she is, okay? Don't want to spoil too much, at least not in the beginning. This will be a spoiler review, I guess, because I still haven't mastered the art of doing a spoiler-free review. So sorry about that. Anyway, get right into it. I literally just finished this movie about 5 minutes ago, so I'm going to give you the plot as I remember it, because I was watching it in installments. And then we'll get out of here, okay? So, basically, first guy, the dad. I don't know, did he have a code name? I don't think he had a code name, so we'll call him the dad. The dad gets onto the train. Brad Pitt gets onto the train. His code name was the Ladybug. So dad gets onto the train. Ladybug gets onto the train. Okay. Ladybug is supposed to find a case, get off the train at the next stop with the case. Okay. So he finds the case. Then we also encounter Lemon and Tangerine, played by Aaron Taylor Johnson and Brian Tyree Henry, respectively, except swap them. So Aaron Taylor Johnson's Tangerine, Brian Tyree Henry is Lemon. And they are in charge of the case and this kid, okay, played by Logan Lerman. And let me just tell you, when I saw Logan Lerman in this movie, it's the exact same way I felt when Nick Jonas popped up in the Jumanji remake with The Rock and Kevin Hart and stuff. Exact same vibe, except he was a little shorter lived than Nick Jonas in terms of playtime. But anyway, so they're supposed to be they're supposed to be, quote-unquote, babysitting Logan Lerman till they get him back to his father. and also this case, which they stashed someplace for safekeeping, okay? But Brad Pitt has his hands on the case. They realize it's missing, so they go hunt it down. They encounter Joey King along the way, who at some point in time has gotten a hold of the dad and is like, ha 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 ha, you're going to help me with my plot to kill the mob boss who's at the end of this train waiting for his son to be returned to him. And the guy's like, why would I do that? And she's like, because if you don't, I will have your son killed. Ha 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 ha. Sorry. Mind you, this is the son that, like, is in the hospital fighting for his life. But whatever. You know, why not try and kill little kids, I guess. So, that's, like, the gist of it. Those are the important parts. Obviously, chaos ensues. They interact with each other. They realize who the other people are, and the other people are also in on this plot. All kind of centered around this kid and this briefcase. Mainly the briefcase. And this mob boss, the White, what is he called? The White Death? Yes, the White Death, waiting for them at the end of this train, okay? So that's what the main focus is on here. I'm going to talk about this in terms of a few different... Remember I said it was late and I'm tired? A few different categories, so I'm going to talk about the cinematography a little bit, the soundtrack. I'll be honest, most of my notes are on the soundtrack. A little bit about the plot and the writing. Oh, and also the acting. So first of all, basically how the plot of this is, obviously they're on a train, and like while they technically can get off because of the events that are ensuing, they like at most they'll step off for a minute while the train's at a platform, but they have to get back on the train in order to see the next step through, so they all end up, at the end. So I love a locked room. I'm not sure if it's called like a locked room or a locked box paradox. Basically when they're all in one setting. Like I think that's the basis of Clue. And I'm sure Clue isn't the first thing to do it, but like that's probably what I can think of as being the most notable in the terms of everyone's in this room. Everyone is accounted for, so it has to be this very small suspect pool. Or in this term where things are happening and you kind of have to put the pieces together before they implode or before you reach the end for whatever reason. And so that's what's happening here, but like you can only work with this limited space and these limited resources and this very small group of people, which is what's happening here. Because, alliances are formed and broken as time suits. I should look more into what those are called. I think they're called locked. Not important, because if I go Google that, we'll be here all night. And of course, I couldn't do an episode without saying, oh my God, that's me and Eleanor. But when I first saw Lemon and Tangerine and they said their names, I was like, oh, that's me and Eleanor. And then I confirmed it because approximately 10 seconds later, Tangerine stole something off of the food cart. And then when the lady walked away, Lemon goes, you have a problem. And Tangerine's like, I don't even know why I took it. I don't want it. Like, I just took it because I could. And that's a conversation Eleanor and I have had. This movie gave me very, in terms of plot and cinematography and, how the characters were written, it gave me, Guy Ritchie vibes in the sense that... And the one Guy Ritchie movie that I love the best is The Gentleman. And so that's sticking out to my head. But I like how you have these very irreverent, I guess, very, unique characters. They're comedic. And they're always dealing with these very serious... Because they're usually, in gangs or, violence... In violent worlds of some sort. And how they alleviate the situations. And they're still, normal, believable, grounded people beyond that. And I think sometimes when characters are written, it's very, or at least written in those situations, it's very easy to be like, oh, this is not realistic. They wouldn't react like that in this situation. But, to be fair, how many of us know assassins, that would, and we know how they would react in a situation? I imagine it's kind of like cops or nurses or things like that who are faced with a great deal of trauma every day and have to find a way to deal with that. And, yeah, maybe it's not always perhaps the best decision to laugh at something or make light of something like that, but at the end of the day, you have to do it. You'll become desensitized. I have a friend who's a nurse actually, and she works with kids, and she was like, I had to shift from where she said she used to work with worst cases, I suppose, and she said I had to shift out of that because my options were either let it destroy me or become completely numb to it, and I don't want to be numb to things like that. So sort of that idea. obviously a little bit deeper in that sense, but in terms of films and assassins and gangs and stuff, like, there's still these real people who have motivations and dreams and feelings and likes and dislikes and yada yada yada. And I didn't mean for this to get so deep, but anyway, I just thought the movie was very Guy Ritchie-esque, serious plot, not so serious characters, and you're interested to see how the plot plays out, but also you enjoy watching the characters themselves. Like, you could watch those characters you would watch a movie of those characters doing other things because they're fun and enjoyable, whereas sometimes I think when you have a serious movie, you're like, I'm only watching these specific characters do this because they are the ones involved in this story, but I wouldn't necessarily want to see what they do, hanging out on a Sunday or something like that, if that makes sense. And then Lemon and Tangerine had a debate about fruit, and I just wanted to note this because Ella and I said we had a debate about fruit, but to be honest with you, the debate is still ongoing. It's just we've tabled it because if we bring it up with each other, it will be the only thing we talk about for like at least a week. So we do have a on pause debate about fruit going on right now. And then I wrote Logan Lerman, which again was how I felt when I saw Nick Jonas in Jumanji. My brain went, Nick Jonas. But honestly, I can't believe I'm about to say this, but I think Logan Lerman takes the cake over Nick. Actually, I can believe I'm about to say this. Logan Lerman takes the cake over Nick Jonas. However much you think I like Nick Jonas, however much I think I like Nick Jonas, I like Logan Lerman 50 times more than that, at least. And this Logan Lerman had a face tattoo. And I know you might be thinking, Kalina, that's not something that's cute. And I, Kalina, would say to you, you're wrong and I'm sorry. And he had like this little Russian accent. I don't know what he was doing, but I love Logan Lerman. Every time I see that photo of Logan Lerman with gray hair, you guys know the one, it's like a side profile, like the sun's hitting him nicely, and you can see these streaks of gray hair in his hair. I have to like sit down for a very long time and just process that. So, just so you all know where my head is at in terms of Logan Lerman. So, I'm going to start with the acting, because if I keep going, I'm actually going to get way too far into the plot, and then it'll just be a continuation of what I always do with Eleanor, and I'm trying to change it up, and, you guys let me know if you like this style of dissection better than what we usually do. So, in terms of the acting, up to the point where, so we meet, Brad Pitt's with, like, the second character we meet, and we meet him fairly early on. I want to say, like, 15, maybe 20 minutes into the movie, and the movie's about 2 hours, if not longer. And so up to when he got on the train, I found Brad Pitt a little cheesy, but Brad Pitt is the caliber of actor that can get away with a little cheese because of who he is. And I thought this was a good movie for Brad Pitt in the sense that he's such a high-level actor that when you see him in a movie, it's very hard to not go, oh my God, that's Brad Pitt. And think that, like, that's your first thought, and, like, your secondary thought or secondary action is connecting with the character he's playing, because usually you're like, oh my God, that's Brad Pitt. So here I thought, oh my God, that's Brad Pitt, but, like, I also enjoyed him as a character. And I don't know if they did this intentionally, but, like, he had a name, but it wasn't said very often, because obviously these characters didn't really know each other. They were all strangers to each other at the start of this, except for Lemon and Tangerine, who knew each other. So I basically kind of perceived him as Brad Pitt, but what would Brad Pitt do in this situation? But obviously I don't know the man, right? So anyway, I thought he was a little cheesy, but he can kind of get away with that. I thought he did a really good job. I thought he brought a believable, I mean, obviously, what is there to say about Brad Pitt? Everyone, like, we know he's a good actor, he's known for being a great actor. So, like, I just thought he was playing a very believable older character who's, like, kind of not super thrilled he's in the situation he's making the best of it. He's trying his best to play it on his terms, because Ladybug, Brad Pitt's character, has been going to therapy. He's trying to find his inner peace, and, like, his inner peace keeps getting tested, and he has to fight really hard to hang on to that. So I think that's a good metaphor, I suppose, or, like, use of that sort of situation where you have to choose to be the bigger person. You have to choose to be the better person. even when you don't want to, even when it's hard. That's when it's most important. So, he's out, but in his case, he's literally fighting for his life. People are trying to kill him, and he's just trying to get this job done and get off this train and go home. That's all he wants to do. And before I met Eleanor, in terms of like duos and how they behave, I wouldn't have found Tangerine and Lemon believable. But now that I have met Eleanor and I see how we are, they're completely believable. Because they're like having very serious discussions. They're like, they're talking to the kid. They're like, we saved you from, being ransomed off. Then we also got the ransom, and we killed these. And they're like talking about how they killed 17 people. And then Lemon goes, no, it was 16. And Tangerine's like, no, it was 16. It was 17. And Lemon turns to Logan Lerman and goes, do you mind if we table this for a second? And then they proceed to have an argument and go step by step over all the people they killed while they were rescuing Logan Lerman, his character. And that's just, it seems ridiculous, but like, that's what having friends is like. Sometimes you harp on the little things, and then you're like, okay, back to the big picture anyway. Now, I hate to say this, and I hate to sound like a woman hater, okay? But Joey King's in this movie, and I don't love her for some reason. I can't tell you what it is. Just, I do not vibe with her. For some reason, she's just not my cup of tea. So I don't know if that was clouding my judgment, but I felt like her character was the least dimensional, if that makes sense. Like, she seemed the most 2D, like the flattest in terms of, oh, look, it's a pretty girl who's actually smart and masterminding this whole thing. But she's playing up I'm just a little girl, I don't know any better caricature. I don't love that caricature, first of all, because I think it's very easy to go like way too far with it, and then it is just that. It doesn't really have any depth because I think that's a valid thing that people do, and that's a valid point you could make and a valid character you could design and write to make a point or make a reference to the real world. But very often it is done as this flat thing, like the women are ridiculous, especially when you find out later why she is that way. So I thought she was bad, cheesy. Then Bad Bunny showed up, and I was like, Bad Bunny? But then he spoiler, he got killed off fairly early after we saw him. So wasn't too fussed about that. He was not like doing great acting, but one, didn't have a lot of lines. Two, it was like typical acting that you would expect from a non-actor, like, when a singer does a cameo and things, as is the case here. Or, a model does a cameo on something. It's about the same quality of acting you would expect in that scenario. So I wasn't wowed, but like I didn't necessarily have high hopes either. I think those are all the characters I want to talk about. Back to Brad Pitt just briefly. Well, in terms of acting, back to Brad Pitt just briefly. I really like his like old man. I think he really did a good job playing up the old man reluctantly fighting because he has to, not because he wants to. Like at the very beginning, his handler who's talking to him on the phone throughout the whole movie is like, bring the gun from his supplies. And he was like, yeah, okay. And he pretends to pick it up and pack it. And then comes to find out later he needs a gun. So he's literally just like, he's using this briefcase to fight people. At one point, he uses a train manual to fight. Like, he's just like, whatever he can lay his hands on. And then the whole time he's preaching, my therapist, Barry says blah, blah, blah. And hurt people. And he's just yelling things like that while he's fighting for his life. Because he doesn't want to be fighting for his life. He'd be happy if he was like, can we just talk this out? Can we just do that instead? But unfortunately, everyone said no. Anyway, those are all my points on the acting, I believe. So to move over to the cinematography, I really, really enjoyed more than anything else. My favorite part of the movie was Lemon and Tangerine had a lot of fourth wall breaks in the beginning. I didn't realize it stopped because then I really got into the movie too. But I didn't realize it stopped. But before they started interacting with the other characters, I'll say, and like the plot sort of fleshed out in terms of the characters meeting each other and discovering each other's motivations, they had fourth wall breaks, like when they were recounting the story of how many people they killed. every time they count one, they'll turn to the camera and they'll be like, there's one. And then the next one will turn to the camera and be like, okay, that was 10 plus 3 more on bikes and stuff like that. So they had a bunch of those, and I really, really enjoyed those because it felt both like they were talking to us, but also like they were turning to each other, even when they weren't with each other, and being like, see, like I was right, or see, this is happening. So I really liked that. And it made me kind of think about how the other characters were framed up and the way their stories were told. And so Ladybug, Brad Pitt's stories were always told like he's talking to his handler and he's like, blah, 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 remember Bolivia? And then we'll get like a little bit of a flashback or like some really vague statement. Like when Bad Bunny shows up and he's trying to figure out, Bad Bunny's character is from Mexico. And so he hears him speaking Spanish and speaking with a Spanish accent. And so then after, Ladybug's sitting there like, Bolivia? Barcelona? And he's like trying to remember what Spanish speaking country he could have possibly ran into this man from, because the man knew him. So I liked how with the handler and the way he talked through all his problems and talked about like what his therapist said and things like that, it really felt like Brad Pitt had a narrator, this omnipresent, I don't know if no, that's not the word. Basically this all-seeing, overseeing narrator to kind of guide us through the story and guide us through his background at the very least, where Lemon and Tangerine were like speaking directly to us, cutting directly to us. And then in terms of framing up characters, Joey King, who was playing the prince, she was always framed up in a way that emphasized her little girl persona, so that emphasized the fact that she's smaller than this man. She's like, quote unquote, controlling, emphasizing her little, she's wearing this little pink polo and a little pink skirt and heels, which, like, I don't know why, I was getting very Dora vibes from this outfit. It was like the shirt she was wearing, and then she had this bob haircut, and every time they like gave a close-up of her from collarbones up, I was like, that looks like Dora. That's exactly what that is. But she's always framed up in a way that kind of emphasized that, so I did appreciate that in terms of telling the story, contrasting her actions with the visuals, because obviously that's the whole point of her visuals as a character, is people aren't going to assume she's up to anything. And then this is a little bit of a spoiler, but I thought this was really good cinematography. Two things. First, Lemon is talking to Joey King. This is towards the end of the movie. And he basically catches her. He trips her up on accident, but realizes and calls her out on it. But the way they frame it, when she's in the foreground, kind of fuzzy, because she's like right up with the camera, and he's in the background as she's talking and saying the thing that he goes, because he's like ready to move on, because he's trying to find Tangerine, and he's trying to find this briefcase. And he says, have you guys seen a guy with glasses and a case coming through here? And she says, no, we didn't see anyone with a briefcase. And Lemon's like, and he starts to walk away, and then he turns around and he goes, but wait a second. Because most people would assume suitcase. If I said case, and we're on a train, an overnight train at that, most people would say suitcase. But you didn't. You said briefcase. How'd you know it was a briefcase? And just the way that was framed up. And then, unfortunately, tragedy strikes. Lemon is shot. Tangerine finds him. And, like, collectively, Lemon and Tangerine are known as the twins. So they're like, he's like, there's my brother. And he finds him. And they just frame up this beautiful, not quite extreme close-up, but, like, a little closer and then a close-up. This beautiful close-up they frame up of Aaron Taylor Johnson's face as he sees his brother Lemon lying on the floor, and he realizes he's dead, and he's processing this. And it's a close-up for this whole, it's not a long shot, but like it is held for a while, obviously, to kind of get the emotions out. You can see he's like, he wants to cry, but he can't because he has things he has to do. So he takes this necklace off, and he puts it over his brother, and he stands up, and he like kind of, steals himself, and he goes about his business. But for this whole scene, while he's crouching down, eye level with his brother, we're kind of getting him at the angle Lemon is lying at. And just get this close-up so you just see the emotion. There's no body acting. There's no us looking at Lemon's body to kind of get this emotion. They rely solely on, so I guess it's about cinematography and acting, because they're relying solely on Aaron Taylor Johnson's performance to motivate those emotions and draw those emotions out of us. And I think they did a good job. Now, we did kind of have a Romeo and Juliet situation where turns out Lemon wasn't dead, but then Tangerine was dead by the time we found out Lemon wasn't dead. So then we get Tangerine sitting next to his brother and reminiscing on their childhood, and we get a close-up of him from a different angle, because before, Tangerine was sitting like kind of squatting, so he was a little bit over Lemon. So when we look at Tangerine, we're getting the view as though we were Lemon laying down, whereas here they're sitting side by side, so our close-up of Lemon's face is from the side as he now processes his grief. And just the fact that, like, this is more of a writing point, but the fact that they had to mourn each other and go through this horrible thing that no one wants to have to go through, losing a sibling, is gut-wrenching. And that touched me a lot more than Aaron Taylor Johnson's did. So props to Brian Tyree Henry, which I really hope is his name. And this I didn't mention till the end, because I didn't realize how much I liked it till I saw the end card, because there was like a little end sequence scene, or, end credits scene. And they did name cards for everyone. And this movie looked like it's by a Japanese production company. And then they're in Japan. The first guy, the dad, is Japanese. So, like, they're speaking Japanese for parts of this movie. And we're immersed in the culture. We're immersed in the city we're in, right? And so everyone got little name cards, and it would pop up their name in Japanese and then, like, say it in English. So it'd be like Tangerine and Lemon. Boom, Ladybug. And it was like a little freeze frame, very action movie-esque. I'm kind of thinking, like, what was that movie? Scott Pilgrim, that sort of vibe. I love a good name card. I think when it's done well, it's so cute. So I really like those. Just another cinematography choice, I suppose. I didn't really know what else to put that under. So I'm going to breeze through plot and writing because I don't have too many notes for those. And I have so many notes on soundtrack that I want to get into. So up to the first note I made was up to the point where Tangerine and Lemon realized they've lost the case. I thought it was pretty solid. I could see where they were going with it, and I was interested to see how these characters interacted, because from the time we met the characters, it was very clear how Ladybug, so Brad Pitt, Tangerine and Lemon, and the Japanese dad were all connected. Japanese dad less so, but kind of had a clear picture. Whereas now I'm trying to figure out, but we still had this mystery basically about how Japanese dad and the prince, Joey King's character, were connected, and how that little story that they had going on was related to everyone else's. And I was really worried for a while it wasn't going to be, but thankfully it did turn out to be. These types of movies, I don't know if I'd say it's specifically Locked Room or if it's just thrillers or dramas like this. I like when everything's connected. I don't always like when everything's connected because I feel like it's a little like cliche, and I'm like, that's not humanly possible. But when we get to the end, the way they explain it and justify it, kind of going into our plot points, our plot category, I thought it was really well explained and totally made sense. And there was a little mishap in there that made it more believable to me, because it's impossible to try to organize all these moving parts and have everything go perfectly for you. So, I also thought this was very fun for the audience in terms of plot, because we know the characters are passing each other, especially in the beginning. They're literally walking past each other on the train and talking about how, we need to find this briefcase, right? Meanwhile, he's walking past the two characters that brought the briefcase on the train and are hiding it. So, like, we as the audience know something the characters don't know, which is, if I remember correctly from when I was in school, is irony. That's how irony works. Not irony. No, it might be irony. It might be a type of irony, I'm pretty sure. Basically, where we know something the characters don't. And there's sometimes, where the characters know something we don't. Or some characters know something, other characters, blah, blah, blah. Long story short, we as the audience know something the characters don't. So I really like that, because it kind of adds suspense and tension without having to do that in a less authentic way, like, putting spooky music or building music to kind of create that same effect. It does it from the plot, genuinely. And then this movie also had something that I really love, which is when they mention something that we're supposed to know, and they're like, oh yeah, the classic blah blah blah, and we as the audience are like waiting for the next scene to be like, what is the classic blah blah blah. So here Tangerine and Lemon say, oh yes, the old Punch and Judy, and then they go to enact the old Punch and Judy, and we are sitting there going, well, what's the old Punch and Judy? And so the payoff is immediate in that sense. But again, another thing that kind of builds a little suspense for you, builds a little tension that you have to wait for, even if it's just for a few seconds. And you get a quick payoff, and it's usually an enjoyable payoff because it's such a low stakes thing. It's really hard to like have it be bad. And the same thing with like Ladybug lifting off different places he's done jobs, I suppose is how I would phrase that. It's like if he may not delve into all of them, so he's like Uruguay, Bolivia, Barcelona, right? If he doesn't delve into any of them, we get little glimpses of the one that's relevant to the case, or the one that's actually the truth or time. Relevant is the relevant one, basically, is what I'm trying to say. Also, in terms of writing, sorry, I'm just like skimming through my points there. Also, in terms of writing, I feel like when a character curses a lot, it's like just played up for shock value. Whereas here, I didn't feel that way because Aaron Taylor Johnson's character, Tangerine, just was dropping F-bombs left and right and left and right and left again. Okay, and normally I feel like they just do that just because they can be like, oh look, we've got an R rating, or oh look, we can curse because we're adults. Whereas here, it felt very genuine. Especially when you learn, I've said this before, but again, a little bit of a spoiler. He and Lemon are brothers, and Lemon doesn't curse nearly as much. And they're both British, by the way, the characters. So, to have them, it felt very British in that sense. But just very clear, like, definitions in their personality versus it being where they grew up, in the environment they grew up in, and the environment they work in. Oh, and then also in terms of writing, now, not to sound like a media nerd, but there's this idea of Chekhov's gun, which is basically, if we see a gun in a piece of media, we as the audience expect the gun to go off. So, let me back up. If we see a gun in a piece of media, if we're shown a gun in a piece of media, that gun has to go off before it's over. So we as the audience are seeing the Chekhov's gun in this movie, which is this very deadly snake that was stolen and is now loose on the train. And none of our characters are really aware of the fact that it's loose because they didn't know there was a snake on the train in the first place. The only person who knows is Ladybug because he accidentally set the snake loose, but he wasn't happy about it and didn't really have time to fix the problem because it was kind of a byproduct of him trying to do something else that was more time-pressing and crucial to him surviving the train ride, right? So I really liked the use of the snake as Chekhov's gun in this instance, particularly because very often Chekhov's gun, whatever the item is, you'll see once in the beginning, and then it's not till you get to the very end that you're like, oh, that's how that connected, or oh, that's what that meant, or oh, now we're getting to see the payoff in real time. So in terms of the snake being Chekhov's gun in this movie, is we saw the snake escape and heard how it was deadly, so we had heard a news article about this deadly snake going missing. Okay, a few scenes later, we get a little payoff because we actually see the snake on the train escaping. We get that little flashback to confirm and connect the dots for us, right? Then we see the snake at random points just slithering down the train while all this other action is going on. So we as the audience are tense and we're waiting to see when is this going to pay off because this snake is working its way towards something. Otherwise, we wouldn't keep going back to it. So I like when we revisit Chekhov's gun, basically, in a piece of media. That's what I'm trying to say. Long story short. And so that's the snake as Chekhov's gun. And then Ladybug, whose name was kind of ironic because he said he had really bad luck. So then his handler was like, well, ladybugs have good luck. So out of irony, she's calling him Ladybug. Him kind of being this key crucial character that connects all the other characters because he connects Lemon and Tangerine to himself which kind of helps set this catalyst for everyone else figuring out about each other and realizing that, like, who they can trust and who they can't trust. So I liked him being set up as that narrative device in that sense. And just in terms of, like, pure writing and, like, the actual words written on the page for the actors to say, at one point, a character at the end who I have not mentioned, but is a crucial character, which is the Japanese dad's dad, so I'll call him Japanese grandpa. He says, "We prepare together or we die alone," which I really liked, and it made me think of one of my favorite quotes, which is, "If you want to go far, go alone. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together." So, kind of how they had to learn to rely on each other, even though they didn't trust each other. But they, you need to. Teamwork makes the dream work. It was like not a feel-good story, I don't want to say, but like this moment of we need to set our differences aside because they're arguing the whole time, and we need to understand that there's a bigger picture, and the don't shoot the messenger type of vibe. But yes, this person in front of you may have caused you harm, but it's because this man at the end, this big mob boss, had put all these events in motion for us to be here to cause harm to each other. We shouldn't be mad at each other for that. We need to band together and be mad at him for being the catalyst for all these things, right? So those are my plot and writing notes. I'm going to get to my favorite part, the soundtrack. The timing and the use of music in this movie is great. It's my favorite part of the whole movie. I think the second is maybe either the name cards or Lemon and Tangerine. But just kind of how they use the music to introduce the characters, which like obviously is a thing they do in every movie. But we get Staying Alive, right? For Ladybug. That's how he's introduced. And he's kind of, he's on this fun. He's like an older guy. He's a little bit like chill and loose. He's like, I got a therapist and we should all just love each other. And, he's on his healing and peace journey. So to have a fun little song like Staying Alive, low stakes, here for a good time, not a long time, which is kind of how he is. Because every time he's fighting, he's like, I don't want to use a gun. I just want to get on the train, get this case, and go home. I'm not asking for a lot. Then when we meet, well, not when we meet, actually, but we get this story about the White Death, who is this, like I said, this mob boss who's the antagonist for the film. The music they picked for that was very good in terms of the climax of his story, not the movie overall, but his story specifically. Then we get some British punk rock, this song, I'm Forever Blowing Bubbles by the Cockney Rejects for Lemon and Tangerine. Getting down to business, they realize the case is stolen. They're hemming and hawing, they're arguing with each other, and they're like, listen, we need to buckle down, stop talking, and just go handle business. So when they do that, we get this, this punk rock British song for them, because they're British. They're walking down, not so much on the man, but they're like stomping down everyone in their way. Then when we meet Bad Bunny's character from Mexico, we have this beautiful Spanish music playing throughout. There's some nice, I really like this. When they do the old Punch and Judy, when Lemon and Tangerine do the old Punch and Judy, they play this like Western music, but kind of heavier Western music, because Tangerine ends up having sort of like a standoff with these not with the mob boss himself, but with like his little lackeys. So there's like 7 of them. He comes off the train, and he even, after I wrote that note, he even said that he's like, because we're having ourselves a little standoff here, aren't we? So I really like the use of music there, and him saying that made me feel validated. I was like, I see what he was going for here, whoever the director was. And then one of my favorite parts in the whole movie is Ladybug and Tangerine are fighting, like trying to kill each other, okay? They haven't quite reached their footing in terms of making an alliance or anything. So they're trying to kill each other, and they're in one of the train cars. And then this girl she plays a character in The Boys on Amazon. She's playing like one of the food cart ladies, and she comes in with the food cart, and she's restocking the food cart, and they both just stop fighting, and they're like, oh, I'm so sorry, I'm in your way, and they're like shifting out the way, and Ladybug goes, actually, would you mind terribly if I got a bottle of water? And she gives him water, and he's like, no, actually, do you have any sparkling water? She's like, yeah, and she gives him sparkling water. He's like, oh my god, I just gave all my cash to this other guy on the train. Which, side note, the other guy on the train was a cameo from Channing Tatum. But he's like, yeah, I just gave like $200 to this guy on the train. Do you mind like paying for it? So poor Tangerine, Aaron Taylor Johnson's character, has to fish some money out his pocket to pay for it. And then after she leaves, he's like, okay, let's resume fighting. And Ladybug's like, no, I gotta finish the water. And as he's drinking the water, he's like, you sure you still don't want to talk this out? And Tangerine's like, nope, I'm pretty sure. So he said, fine. Ladybug screws the water bottle back up and then uses it as a weapon, and the fight resumes. But I said all of that to say, while they're fighting, music's playing. In this little in-between scene where he's getting the water, Tangerine's waiting for him. They're waiting for the lady to leave so they can resume fighting. The music also pauses and picks back up when they start fighting again. Now, I'm actually just going to finish with this because it made me very sad, but I thought it was also very beautiful. When Lemon and Tangerine go to do business, okay? They play I'm Forever Blowing Bubbles by the Cockney Rejects. When Tangerine finds Lemon dead on the floor, they play the sad version of I'm Forever Blowing Bubbles by the Cockney Rejects as he's going through the 5 stages of grief all at once. Then we get another version of the song because we actually see them together as kids when Lemon finds Tangerine dead and he's sitting there with them and he's thinking back to when they were children watching TV together and the song was playing on the radio. And that's why it's their song. That's why it's the song that's been playing this whole time. And I was totally not emo about that at all. And there were some other good things. We had some like rock music as the train's like pulling into the station for this final showdown with the boss. So like as the train is slowing down, the music's picking up because the plot's picking up. This is the climax. This is the moment. Will they? Won't they? Will they win? Won't they win? We don't know. So I really like that. My throat hurts a lot. I don't know if you can tell. Please let me know if you... before I get into all of that. I like this movie a lot. I thought it was going to be like a very serious, like almost takes itself too seriously kind of drama movie. Because I find sometimes when they make movies like this, they tend to go that way. And this wasn't that at all. I really enjoyed it. I almost didn't take a good enough notes because I was sitting there genuinely enjoying watching the movie. So I think I'll sit down and actually watch it again just to watch it with my eyes and not, comment on it. So if I have any more thoughts, I'll probably post them on our Twitter or Instagram or something. So keep an eye out on those. Our Twitter is Don't Quote Us 27. Instagram and TikTok is Don't Quote Us on that. I've been Kalina. Like I said, it's very late. I'm very tired. My throat's a little dry. My new child, the cat, just woke up, so he's going to be bebopping around the room soon. So I will see you next week. Eleanor will be here, hopefully. I can't wait to see you. If you have any recommendations, let us know. We're always open. We love chit-chatting with you guys, so yeah. Thanks. Give this a like and, subscribe, comment if you feel so inclined. It really helps us out. And yeah, I'll see you guys next time. Bye. Thanks for listening. Don't quote me on that. One day we'll have an outro, but it's not today.